Phenomenon. Lightning, volcanoes, earthquakes, cyclones, tsunamis, bushfires, tornadoes, floods, landslides, avalanche. Disaster, catastrophe, devastation, severe, destruction. These were a few keywords my students could pinpoint after a brief unit I took on natural disasters last term. Although I thought I had done extensive work in pre-planning, the students still had unanswered questions when the unit was finished. They wanted to know what the long-term effects of disasters were, how can communities cope with them, and what would we do if something happened here at school. It was really upsetting that even though I'd done all of that work, there were still things that I missed. When reflecting on the unit, I realised that I kept the subject of disasters and phenomena separate from any other area in the curriculum. I didn't explore with the students the effect on people and communities. I didn't have the student explore the ways to troubleshoot issues, make plans and experiment with different solutions. In fact, I didn't really involve the students in their learning at all. I set them tasks, and they worked away at them quite happily. After researching different techniques in teaching that might inspire my students, I discovered a philosophy called curriculum integration. Curriculum integration is the alternative to the single subject approach to organising a curriculum. The key focus is that learning is more relevant and meaningful if it is organised around the concepts that are relevant to the student and their lives. It is also important that the student's prior knowledge informs the integrated learning process. Inquiry is also fundamental, as often this style of teaching is sparked by questions, much like that of my students. According to research, when the students have the freedom to question and bring up their concerns about what is happening in the world, they are showing a genuine interest. Therefore, having students share in the decision-making of what they are learning helps them to have an increased interest and allows them to take ownership of their own learning. By allowing the students to explore, question and challenge the world around them now, they will grow to be critical and innovative members of society in the years to come. So, you say, how does this look in practice? What does it look like in a classroom? Well, using the example of my class and natural phenomena, I will give you an exemplar of what it looks like in practice. One of my students asked specific questions about the Christchurch earthquake and the fact that New Zealand is still feeling the repercussions from this disaster. I have loosely constructed potential learning areas and objectives from level 4 that would relate to this disaster. I have also brainstormed ideas on some tasks or experiments you could do with your class in the event that your students show interest in natural disasters and phenomena. One learning area that seems to directly relate to natural phenomena is science. More specifically, the learning objectives, physical world, and planet Earth and beyond. Within these learning objectives, there are many experiments and investigations you could delve into with the students. In relation to the physical world, students could investigate the tectonic plates and how they break up New Zealand. They could research what makes each individual earthquake different in terms of Richter scale and epicenters. They could also look into liquefaction and how and why that occurs. In relation to planet Earth and beyond, the students could research the lasting effects on Earth and the learning objectives, interactive systems. They could explore water displacement, pollution, and tsunamis as a repercussion of underwater earthquakes. One hands-on experiment you could do with the students uses only a cake tin filled with jelly, Glad wrap, and cubes. By tapping over the side of the tin, you can show how the seismic activity in the Earth's crust affects the buildings and other structures on the Earth's surface. Onto the learning area of social sciences. Being that this learning area is all about the people and events that influence and affect people, there are at least 3 potential learning objectives that can relate back to the subject of the Christchurch earthquakes. The 3 learning objectives that stood out to me were 4.4, understand that events have causes and effects, 4.6, understand how formal and informal groups make decisions that impact communities, and 4.7. Understand how people participate individually and collectively in response to the community challenges. In each of these, you could explore how the people of Christchurch responded by creating volunteer groups and neighbourhood support. They could investigate how the government distributes the funding. The students could also explore the effects on the economy in Christchurch, a previously popular tourist destination, and how that has affected the local business owners. An example of a social sciences session could be that the class could do a case study into the student army and other volunteer groups that were created to help others in their time of need. After brainstorming and discussing the volunteer groups and their functions, the students can come up with ways to fundraise and donate to their individual foundations that they chose. This task can be fun as students can take complete ownership of this learning experience. Finally, to the learning area of technology. A selection of learning objectives that relate to the Christchurch earthquakes are planning for practice, technological modelling, brief development, and outcome development and evaluation. The students could create a disaster plan for the school in regard to earthquake safety. This then could be implemented throughout the entire syndicate or school, having drill earthquakes to test the effectiveness of the plan. The students could also create their own disaster kits for home or for school. To do this, they would need to brainstorm what would be needed in the emergency. Examples would be batteries, clean water, and non-perishable food. The teacher can scaffold this process, ensuring that students realise what purpose each item has. An experiment that can build on the learning objective of technological modelling is creating models out of a variety of materials, then seeing how these materials stand up to different elements. For example, a toothpick structure, and how it endures a solid table versus how it endures on a sand-covered table. This would show the importance of reinforcement to buildings and supports to protect the structure from earthquake. As my presentation draws to a close, I want to reiterate some key points. Integration across the curriculum occurs naturally and should be promoted as it enhances student learning experiences. The integration process is often dependent on student inquiry, which allows the students to take ownership of their own personal learning. Having the students focus on concerns or questions they have about the world around them will lead them to being active and critical members of society. And finally, curriculum integration is a fun and interesting process to shape your classroom learning around. Trust me, your students will thank you for it.